Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the holiday seasons. I hope that everyone has had a great Christmas. I myself spent it in a nice dinner with my family, and of course I'm also looking forward to New Year's Eve. I hope everyone will have a great holiday seasons. Basically, I myself am planning to take it easy for New Year's Eve. Perhaps I'll even spend some time in EVE Online. When it comes to the EVE Online development, we did get a dev blog from Team Talos indicating that, well, it is the holiday seasons, so the development is a little bit slowed down at the moment for EVE, but I think everyone is looking forward to 2020, and Team Talos has some nice things in the works, I think, with well, some focus on faction warfare and the return of the reindeer filaments. They are so popular that they're definitely planning to do more with them, so I'm really curious to see how they're gonna keep that going. I sold mine, if you guys are curious, because these will only, the current reindeer filaments will only last until January 14th. So yeah, I just took the ISK rather than risk anything else. The dev blog was pretty clear on that. They're gonna develop, I think, like something new when it comes to the filaments that push you into nullsec for some, well, closer to instant action. Let's take a look at the New Eden store and see what's happening there. So we have the Yaul star skin front and center again. Normally you get the green star on all the ships. On some of them you still have the full bar, and then on some other ones like the Stradios here you don't have the bar anymore. Oh yeah, it's actually up here. I thought it was at the front, but it's up here. So now that we have a full bar and you also have the extra star. Down here you've got some apparel that's showing up. Honestly, I don't feel the need to buy any of that, because for the 14 days of gifts in EVE Online we got some pretty amazing looking gear in my opinion, and then we go back to the Zento Isideko yellow, white and black skin. Pretty cool in my opinion. Then you get some Serpentis skins. Those look pretty great as well. 55 plex doesn't seem unreasonable in price, but nothing special, no sales or anything like that happening apparently between Christmas and New Year's Eve. Yeah, well, that's okay. We do get lots of sales on other things. I know that CCP is going with another 15% discount on Omega time at the moment, so we'll see if that has an impact on the market. Let's jump in, and that's why everyone is here, of course, and we'll start our plex and stuff at 3 minutes. Like that, and here we go. Plex. Let's go for the plex chart first. You can see that after declining to a 1-year low point, getting well below the 3.25 million ISK, you can see the volume spikes 1 and 2 sales from CCP that have driven us to the lowest point of the year. We do have a bit of a surge back up, but it's rather limited. We are not breaking or even getting too close to the 3.5 million just yet. So let's take a look at it in GTAP 4.4. 3.4 million for the sellers, 3.2 million for the buyers, and the sellers go down to 3.3 million for the first one, but it very quickly goes to close to 3.4 million on most sellers as well. It's only 20 plex that are basically being sold as quickly as possible, and then we have almost 3.3 million as well for the buyers in the player-owned trade hubs. 4 jumps away actually in Obanen, another trade market trying to establish itself. Interesting stuff. Basically last week was the right time to buy plex. I think this will probably turn out to be the bottom price. At this point I'm expecting the post-holiday season to bring back some more activity as we get into real winter time, and then of course SB will probably start to hype up FanFest. Hopefully Team Talos can bring out some cool balance changes that'll keep people playing, and then I do think that yeah, plex will start to go back up in price. For the multiple pilot train certificate, we have no real sale actions. You can see here in July that we had a massive sale that dropped the price down from 2 billion to 1.5 billion, and now we're just above that. We actually probably still have some of these volumes to absorb at this point. The trend is slightly up, but it's a pretty slow upturn, although the difference is pretty stark here. Sellers 1.6 to 1.63 billion ISK. And then if I go for JITA alone, it goes towards 1.7 billion very quickly. And then the buyers have been forced above 1.5 billion at this point as well. So this trend is probably going to continue to go up. The difficulty is, as we get away from this sale, the volumes will start to drop, and actually selling stuff at this price range is not that easy. Next up, we have the skill extractors. These are also bouncing back from their 1-year low point, went as low as 370 million ISK. We're back to 377 for the sellers and 373 for the buyers. Very narrow margin, so there must still be quite a few sellers keeping the price from increasing. But I think that again, this will be like a double bottom, you could say, in December, and I'm fully expecting us to start to increase in price again after the holidays. For the skill injectors, here are the large skill injectors, and these are going back down in price, went above 850, almost 900 million actually. That's quite a wide swing, and we have to give back some of those gains. We are now selling these for 820 million ISK, buyers coming in at 790, below 800 million. I actually think that this is okay to try an investment on. Main reason for this, probably in my opinion, the decrease in price of plex that is finally starting to show through, and of course the chilling spree that is providing us with extra skill points again. That should lower demand a little bit, and thus I think that this spike here will be somewhat shorter-lived. And right now I think we're basically forming another small bottom, not at the very best price. We've gone substantially below 800 million in November, but I do think we basically have a second opportunity to jump in on some 800 million large skill injectors, and that does make sense to me. The potential for last year was 1 billion ISK, so that's a nice 25% increase, I think, from the starting price of 800 million. Definitely worth a look in my opinion. Small skill injectors are doing the same thing, went up to 190 million ISK, are dropping back down. Real low point 160 million, I think 165, something like that can still be done. 177 for the sellers and 157 million for the buyers. So you can definitely try to grab some small skill injectors at around 160. It's not going to be easy to grab them, but any that you do, I think will make a fine investment. And that leaves us with the daily alpha injectors in the injector category. These are still slowly meandering at their low point, just below 40 million ISK. We're talking just below 40 for the sellers and 36 million for the buyers. For a larger horizon, you could invest in this as well. Keep one thing in mind, of course, this is different, tied to the alpha clone market. You can see from the volumes that basically lots of sales have been going on that have driven the price down. So this is CCP intervening basically and driving this price so low. I do think it makes sense to invest. It's also decently cheap. 40 million per injector is something different from the 800 million that you need for a large scale injector, but know of course that the large scale injector has that full market that includes Omega, and that does make it quite a bit more attractive in my opinion when you're trying to sell. It's going to be a lot easier to sell an 800 million injector if the price goes up towards 1 billion for that price than a daily alpha injector for 70 million ISK. It's a pretty big difference. And then finally we have the hypercores that are now finally stabilizing at around 350,000 ISK. Almost 350 for the sellers, 320 for the buyers. This will probably become a very stable item and something that will help us gauge interest in the hypernet, I think. After that, we have the mirror market coming in at 915. And here you may already have seen it on the ticker. We do have a big move for Tritanium, basically the continuation on, I think, partly speculation on the resource change that CCP is doing, and of course the fact that they can't really mine Veldspar in Nullstick anymore, at least not from the regular belts, and that does force them to do some imports, driving the chart back to 6.5 is substantially above average. We are talking for JITA 654 for the first seller, 660 for most, and then the buyers are coming coming in at almost 6 ISK as well. That's a substantial jump, and this does mean that titanium is in a very nice spot all of a sudden. 6 ISK is even historically speaking, and 6.5 actually is even historically speaking a great price. Definitely worth it, I think, to sell if you need to, or if you have a need to turn some of your minerals into ISK finally, because we have been waiting for a turnaround here for a very long time. Next up we've got pyrite, and that one is doing well to defend the 5 ISK range, but you can see at the tail end though, 5-day moving average going back down. Sellers have given up. 4.99 for the first ones to come in here, so this is a bit dangerous. This could definitely start a decline in price for pyrite. Buyers are at 4.79, very narrow margin here again. But personally I do think that any fresh supply that is going to start to compete below that 4.99 range is just going to drive the price back down, and that will start to trade at a lower range for pyrite. It's unfortunate. Next up we have Mixelon. That one is also going up in tandem with titanium. I think basically this is bottleneck territory. With the changes, they're probably expecting the Mixelon bottleneck to come back, and that means that we are back to 50 ISK for the first seller, 54 for most, and 50 ISK also for the buyers. Not great, but it's definitely back to a respectable price for Mixelon. Would I sell at this point? Maybe I would. You can see that the chart is hesitating at the tail end. We still don't really know what CCP is planning to do when it comes to the resource redistribution that they want to do. And it may just be that Mixelon is not really a part of that mix. If you want to take advantage of this increase in price, I would definitely understand it. After all, since October to December, we've been hoarding our Mixelon, waiting for a better time. This is 10 ISK more than at 40 at the bottom. It's definitely pretty enticing, I think. After that we have the isogen market that surged up as well on probably speculation. If you look at it, 2 days of increased volumes driving the price from a 1-year low point at 12.5 back up to 16 and already decreasing. I think that this is some position making working around that information of CCP working on a resource balance. 15.43 for the sellers, almost 15 ISK for the buyers. Slight resurgence back down to 15 already. I think we will crash back down pretty quickly unless CCP comes out with some concrete information that's beneficial to isogen. And then we've got Noxium, yeah, also trying to go back up a little bit, but doing so much more timidly than Mixelon or Titanium. And this one goes towards 250. We're talking 255 for the sellers and 240 for the buyers. So away from the lows, but still nowhere near its average 300 ISK. So there's still a ways to go for these high SIC, very common minerals. Very good news, of course, in titanium and in Mixelon. Then we have our four monolithic minerals here. Zydrine, very stable, just below 500 ISK. Slight uptrend to be seen. We are talking 499 for the sellers and 464 for the buyers, but it's pretty stable. Volumes are, well, regular intervals, not that big, so I think that we're finding our price range here. Then we've got Megasite, that's actually coming away from a 1-year low point back towards 400 ISK. Yeah, 397 for the first seller, 406 for most, and 370 ISK for the buyers. Basically 400 ISK for your Megasite, 500 ISK for the Zydrine. That's correct, or is it 400 as well? No, 500 ISK for Zydrine. This is the price range of these minerals, and you can see from the sales here, every single day there's people that bring in 4 million, 5 million, a couple million, and it just keeps going like that. Zydrine is the same thing, but yeah, to my surprise, 1 million, 1 million, 2 million. It's slower in volume, which explains the price difference, and that's actually a surprise because you usually get more Zydrine out of mining than you get Megasite. But this is the situation. These are pretty stable, and honestly, this comes from moon mining. I don't think that unless CCP really tries something very ambitious, that would include making regional hubs for what the moons contain as well, making changes to that. then this is not really going to change for Zyte Dynamics and Megasite. This is my personal expectation. So many people, including small groups, have established moon mining operations. I don't think they're planning to mess with that just yet. After that, we've got basically then my thinking is they're aiming at the rorquals and the really big groups that have really opened up the faucets for minerals. They're gonna try to nerf that, force them to either mine aggressively or to move if they want all of the resources. I think that's gonna be their first boss here on the resource redistribution. This is pure speculation on my part though. And we still have to end with Morphite that goes back down a little bit but stays at a very solid 11,000 disc right now. In fact, 11,700 for the sellers and 10,500 for the buyers. You can see a margin opening up, so this does mean that some downwards pressure is potentially there, but it's still a well above average price, a great price for Morphite. So if you can produce this and bring it to the market, you are in for a good time. Next up, the PI market coming in at 1550. Let's go over these. I personally don't expect a lot of change on this one. The situation is, generally speaking, we have too low demand for our PI materials, and most of them are at averages or below average. So here we get broadcast nodes after dipping below 2 million, dips back to just above that. Yeah, just about that for the sellers and just below that. So it's 2 million for the broadcast nodes, which is right on its average. Not a lot of action, of course. You can clearly see that the ranges here are pretty low between the highs and the low points for the prices. Construction blocks try to get back to 11,000 disc, but you can see in reaching that average, I think that we have a volume dumping happening and we're back to 10,000 to that below average range. It is 11,400 for the sellers though, 9,800 for the buyers, and it's actually those buyers that are winning out on the average prices here, showing again there's so little demand that sellers feel forced to dump to the buy orders, and that creates this average price of less than 10,000 disc right here a couple days ago, while the sellers are still at 11,400, which is back to an average sell price. So we basically have to wait for that demand to come back and to bring the average prices back in range of that 11k here. Consumer electronics, after dipping to another 1 year low point, I think here we finally have an investor that decided to take advantage of that. Massive volume boost, twice the normal volumes, bringing us back to 12,000 disc. It's almost the average. Sellers, as expected here, 13,000 disc, buyers 10,300. Very large margin. 13,000 for the sellers is at the average or above average, and here we have that same situation. You have such low demand that sellers feel forced decently often to sell to these buyers, which creates these average prices that stay away from the sell price, and that's just the situation, but it is nice to see the sellers recover here. Next up, we've got the coolants. These have been doing decently well, or at 12,500 on the chart. In fact, almost 14,000 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers. We can definitely say that coolants are actually going above average at the moment. Then we get our cryoprotectant solutions. Yeah, I think I bought here in November for most of the implants, and I bought right after the peak. So as I made my Mimesis implant set, but these have of course now started their decline. At some point producers do take advantage of this and start to fill the gap, so that's what's happening here. 135,000 for the sellers, 121,000 for the buyers, and that is really getting closer and closer to the normal cryoprotectant solution price range. We are probably going to pay a bit of a premium on that 100,000 range, so I don't think the bottoms will be that low anymore, but the supermassive margins are already over. Enriched uranium staying at the 13,000 range. You can clearly see that we should have 14,000 as an average, and sellers are almost at 14,000 with 13,900. Buyers at 12,500. It's that same story. Low enough demand that sellers sometimes feel forced to sell to those buy orders to create these averages. Integrity response drones, you can see all the volatility leaving the advanced PI materials at the moment. 2.3 million for the sellers, 2.23 million for the buyers. Super narrow margin on a below average price in my opinion if you look at this chart. the mechanical parts nicked, also slowly trying to crawl their way back after a very bad fall. Went as low as 9,000 disc. Sellers are back at 11,000 disc, which is still below average, and buyers are just below 10,000 disc. So here, yeah, slowly trying to recover. We again need a bit more demand for that to happen. Organic mortar applicators also staying at around 1 million disc. Just not much to say here. Just above 1 million for the sellers, just below 1 million for the buyers. And if you look at this entire chart, it's definitely below average. Robotics, I was hoping for robotics to recover a little bit, but that is not the case. In fact, we're going below 90,000 disc. 93 for the sellers, 89,000 for the buyers. Again, if you get 93,000 for the sellers, 89k for the buyers, and look at the chart, 5-day moving average, it's below 90,000 disc. That means that really nobody is grabbing these robotics from the sell prices. People are just dumping these straight to those buyers, which is below 90,000 disc. Potential upswing to 110k. It's not that bad. It's not a super volatile market, but we're clearly at a 1-year low point here for robotics. Self-harmonizing power cores, slight resurgence in the last 10 days, but just getting back to an above 2 million price range. Almost 2.1 million for the sellers, but still below 2 million for the buyers. Around average, I think, here. Superconductors continuing the bad times. I produced this, so I am building up a pretty massive backlog of superconductors, waiting for a better time. I may be waiting for a long time, but I'll be patient on that one. 10,500 disc for the sellers and 9,000 disc for the buyers. That is well below average for sure. The test cultures was the one exception that had a very bad summer, in fact a very bad year up until the fall, where we finally started to go back up, and then now we are back at a more normal price for test cultures. 12,000 disc for the sellers, 9,000 disc for the buyers. Again, really large margin, so look out. We could be in for low demand and then a very big backswing for the prices as well. But right now, of course, if in May, June, July you bought these for 6,000 disc, well, and you can try to sell them now for 12k, that's a cool 100% profit here. Something that I completely missed, basically because I was too scared, because the prices remained this low for such a long time. And then finally we have the wetware mainframes. That is the first one that is going back to an above average price all of a sudden. 2.3 million for the sellers and 2.2 million for the first buyer, 2.1 for most, so it's a bit of a margin that opens up. But this is interesting. This could be the first sign that some demand and some speculation on structure stuff might be coming back to the advanced PI material market. Why wetware mainframes first? Well, it's always been the bottleneck when it comes to actual production in at least the previous releases that included new structures. So this one is very interesting in my opinion, to see that it breaks the trend of all the others. The others are just meandering on their averages or are below average. This one actually has a first slight breakout to an above average price. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Next up, advanced moon materials coming in at 2310. Let's take a look at these. Well, here we could have speculation on resource distribution as well, but this again would be speculating on a pretty ambitious plan from CCP, in my opinion. If they're gonna do that, that would all of a sudden include changes to the moons, which I personally don't think is what they're planning to do at this point. But we'll see, of course. This is all speculation on my part. So for the crystalline carbonites, managed to get back to 160 and now goes back down to the lower range here. 146 for the sellers, 140 for the first buyer, 135 for most. This is definitely back to a below average price. Very interesting to see that on quite a few occasions since the summer, since the blackout, crystalline carbonite has been able to work its way back to that 160 above average price, but it always falls back pretty quickly on supply. Ferrite carbide, same thing. After dipping to 125 for a bit, went back to 160 and is now back down to 150 for the sellers. So we do have some volatility, and sometimes I guess like a drying up of the supply, bring the price back to an above average range. Titanium carbide, that is not the case. We're still below average, getting back to that 1 year low point. Sellers are in at 175, buyers at 165. And apparently 175 is here. You can even grab it from the buy orders looking at the average prices. Then we've got tungsten carbide, same thing, really not doing too well and working its way back below 175. Sellers are still there, but the buyers at 166. You can see the average price dip below 175, so you can grab this for a pretty low price at the moment on the buy side. For the metamaterials, we've got photonic metamaterials. Ouch, that is also declining. Yeah, it's almost inevitable. There is just not enough conflict, I think, to cause serious disruptions in the advanced materials. So photonics 15,500, 14,700 for the buyers. That is pretty low, below 15k right here, close to a low point. Plasmonic metamaterials just recovering from that low point, but you can see that we are not breaking back through the 20,000 barrier, so we're staying well below average. 19,400 in fact for the sellers, 18,600 for the buyers. For the very long term, speculating on either some real action in LSEG or that the redistribution will hit moons as well. This could be an investment to look into, but it remains a bit of a gamble on an ambitious change and track for CCP on the resource redistribution, and I personally don't think that that's what's gonna happen, but to each his own, of course. Non-linear metamaterials, same thing, right back down to 20,000 disk. In fact, the buyers are at 19,600, well below the entire chart. And then finally, our terahertz metamaterials that managed to resurge back towards 25,000 right here in December, but to no avail. Look at the volumes, that's just more supply coming in, back to less than 20,000 disks, substantially so, less than 19k for the sellers, 18,200 for the buyers. 1 year low point yet again. Yeah, this is just the state of affairs here. There was some volatility to look forward to, but it does remain on a downtrend for sure. We still have some other advanced materials to take a look at. Fermionic condensate slowly working its way back to 90k average. But I do think that, yeah, look at the new supply that immediately competes back down here. It won't last very long. Ferrogel just comes from a 1 year low point. Look at that volume. That's obviously some position taking up to 40,000 disks. So whoever bought here, I think, did make a good deal. 38,500 for the sellers, 37,400 for the buyers. We're already back down after that purchase binge to try and basically grab the cheapest stuff. Fullerites down to a 1 year low point here. That's a definite trend break. I mean, honestly, I was very impressed through September and then November, trying to stay very close to 1,000 disks and succeeding in doing so. But now at the tail end, to no avail, down to 933 for the sellers, 905 for the buyers. A clear trend break here. Hypersynaptic fibers also really low at 11,000 disks. Nano transistors, okay, this one was on a complete lack of supply, doing really well throughout the summer again. 6,000 disks, managed to claw its way back, but that was not to last for very long. 5,400 for the sellers, 5,000 for the buyers. We are going back to that normal nano transistor range, so this again shows that supply is alive again and that the pressure is on. Phenolic composites staying above average, that's one exception I would say. To above 2,000 for the sellers, above 2,000 for the buyers as well. That's a bit of a surprise, but again, you can see the pressure, you can see the volume increases on decreasing prices, so supply is coming back to take advantage of this, unfortunately. So I don't think it's gonna last. Same here with ceramic fibers, recovering from a 1 year low point of 300 disk here and stalling before reaching the average. 440 for the sellers, 400, less than that for the buyers. Yep, not a great time for selling and producing advanced wood materials, but potentially, of course, it's the right time to slowly, in my opinion, buy some of these when they reach their low points. That means we get to move on to the Take 2 ships coming in at 29.10. And I am going to drink a bit of water. As we get started. Now, some of you guys may know from my Christmas shopping video that I tried to make some investments in Tech 2 ships and some Tech 3 ships as well. Tried to buy some confessors that were really low, and almost everything has been bought. So did I put them in here? I've got the Cerberus, I've got 2 out of 3 confessors. I don't have the Heretic, but I got the Nemesis, and I don't have the Scimitar, but yeah, 150 is pretty low. So I am looking forward to basically keeping an eye on Tech 2 ships and hoping that we can see some resurgence and the right time to sell. Now the Ares is now going back down, obviously with advanced materials in the state that they are. Generally there is oversupply in the Tech 2 ships, so this one is going towards a 1-year low point. Could be interesting for another purchase. 24.5 million for the sellers, and look at that, still hundreds of them on the market as well. 22.6 million for the buyers. That's all the way down here at the 1-year low point. This could be next. I could try to grab a couple of Ares because this does indicate buy opportunity on the chart. Then we've got the Basilisk. That was not what I was trying to buy, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to buy, Scimitar. Well, this is why, of course, the low point was in November down to 180, and we've actually recovered to 250. So that's a completely different story from the Ares. 240 million for the sellers, more than respectable, but especially 226 for the buyers. That is not bad at all. Theory here, it could be filament related, right? If you want some logistics in the ship, in your fleets that are like 10-20 range, then I think a couple Basilisk makes sense for a shield fleet. So that is probably why we have this slightly above average price and a very strong demand market. Then we get the Cerberus. I bought one at a low point, which is at, let's see what it is, 195. Okay, I actually bought that. Nice. Well, this is why. 210 now for the sellers, but 189 for the buyers. So we are even going for a price below 190 million isk. Maybe I bought a bit too soon. I also think I was decently aggressive with my 195 buy price there, but I've got the investment made. I bought a Cerberus for less than 200 million isk, and look at the chart here, and then the potential up to 280. It could be an amazing trade again. Next up here we get the Crow, another interceptor that is clearly, it tried to hold on to 27.5 million, but it's just breaking through that at the tail end. And so where are the buyers? Look at the lack of buyers, that's interesting. 25 million, 27.5 for the sellers. Averages are dipping below that range, so you can probably right now grab Crows for 25 million. And look at the entire chart, that is not bad. This could be the week to try and snag some cheap interceptors. The Eagle is well, getting away from a low point, and considering that this is now a meta ship in Nullsec apparently, this is kind of still interesting if the buyers are close to 200 million, and they are. 201 million for the buyers, 224 for the sellers. Pretty wide margin between the two, above 10%, and 200 million for something that should be in meta. It could still be okay to try and grab an Eagle as well, but you're not at a low point anymore. Not likely to get back there. For the Guardian, we had this lovely November spike up to 250, so before that 200 to 250, that's a nice sale, and now we're back down to less than 200 million on average. 202 million for the sellers, 180 for the buyers. That's very cheap, and if I'm not mistaken, I actually have a Guardian already from a previous buy, and I bought one for 180 million, so you can still do so right now as well. We're on another downtrend. Must have been here in October that I bought for 180. You have another opportunity to grab a Guardian at the right time. I didn't sell here on the opportunity, but look at that volatility. This is why I love the Tech 2 ship market. You can make amazing trades in decently small time frames on this one. Yeah, if you want to follow me along here, I have a Guardian bought at 280 million ISK, and I should really move stuff from trying to buy to the ticker for the stuff that I have. After that, we get the Heretic. Here I am trying to buy one very aggressively. Let's see what it is. Heretic, 51 million ISK. We're talking 51 million, and here's the competition, of course. This is my buy order for the cheaper taxes, and then 60 million for the buyers, so I am being outcompeted. On the other hand, look at the price here, it's not going anywhere, so I think that with a bit of patience I could still grab that heretic for that price, which would, well, be so much below the entire chart. I think there's almost no way that that's not a good purchase. The Hound, after recovering up to above 30 million ISK, is already making its way back down. So that's again showing that volatility. You guys know my my stealth bomber trade that I've made, Manticore. No, that's actually an old one. Basically, in general, I actually deleted those. It was 22 million purchase, 29.9 million sell price, and pretty fast turnover on this increase here. Next up, we have our Ishtar. Oh, actually should look at the prices. What are we talking about here? Sellers driven back 27 million, and look at that, 500 units. That's going to drive the price back down. Buyers though still at 26 million. So we need a bit more patience, but you guys know 22 million, you know, in that range makes a lot of sense for stealth bombers. Ishtar, very flat above average, so this one is doing really well to defend its price range. 232 for the sellers, 215 for the buyers. I would not be surprised if next to an awesome PvE platform, there's also some PvP fleets that are being made here, and potentially for the ratting, right? With the changes to Vexor Navy issue, it is possible that people slowly move into Ishtars as well to basically replace those pilots, and that's why we have strong demand and a strong price. The Manticore, same thing, right? Bought for 22 million, I think it was here in October, and then sold for 30 million, already working its way back down. 27 million for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers, so still a bit too early, but you can see that the pressure is back and another buy opportunity may just form. For the Munin, research coming back from a 1-year low point, and not even seeing that really on the volumes, so this is just, you know, bad in volumes, I guess. 228 for the sellers, 190 for the buyers. You could still try to grab a Munin for 190. If it does happen, I think that potentially you've got a pretty good buy there. Nemesis, this is the spike again that I took advantage of, man. It turns out that I'm pretty damn lucky, but because after that we crashed down to 20 million ISK here again. Look at the volumes drying up to nothing on that downturn, and then here volumes are back. People are slowly purchasing their way back to 23 million, I think. Yep, 23 million for the sellers, still 19.7 for the buyers. I haven't done it yet, but you can still try to grab Nemesis for less than 20 million ISK, which I think is a worthy trade. After that we get the Oniros, flat at 200 million on average, so that's going to be 204 for the sellers, 190. Buyers forced up here by 10 million almost. That is interesting, that margin is closing, so yeah, your buy opportunities for super cheap Oniroses are over. And then the Purifier went to 30 million and is only now starting to decline here. 28.5 for the sellers. Look at that, 45, 26, 77. It is driving the price back down. And then the buyers are 26 million, so that's still well away from the bottom. I think a bit more patience in the stealth bomber market may be the right move. Nemesis though, that one below 20 does make sense. Saber, okay, surprise volatility for the Saber, 70 million on the high points, 60 million on the low points, 68 for the sellers, 60 million for the buyers. That's still, I mean, then I'm moving on that Heretic at 51 million rather than that Saber at 60 at this point. Just show me another real low point so that I can buy these for 55 million. That's when I'll try to grab a Saber, but before that, nope. That's not where we're gonna go. And then the Scimitar, this is the reason why I am trying to grab one for a very aggressive 150 million. Probably won't work out, but I had to give it a try. 1-year low point, landing on the 185 range, something like that for the average prices. 186 for the sellers. And at the time it was just gone. I could go for 150 and actually be the highest sell order. Some more demand has come in, back up to 175, which if you look at this chart is still below 180. This is gonna demand that I either choose to get rid of that order, or that I place it up to an aggressive like 179 or something like that to at least grab that scimitar. It's a choice that I have to make at this point. But looking at the basilisk, it might be that Shield Logistics are in for a surge, so I think my best move here would be to try and grab a scimitar below 180 and then take advantage of a potential surge. And then finally we get a stiletto super flat below 30 million, so that's not where you want to make your move either. Yeah, very interesting situation in my opinion for the Tech 2 ship market. The oversupply creates opportunities, and I'm trying to take advantage of that, as you can tell from the stuff that I'm trying to buy. Sometimes very aggressively, some on the low end, sometimes aggressively on the high end with like a 195 Cerberus. It really depends on the tactic that you want to use. I just mix it up a little bit, just go with my gut feeling, yeah, as you guys know, I made a nice trade in the stealth bombers just about a month ago, so it's definitely worth it. You can make a lot of risk in the Tech 2 ship market. You just need to time it, which takes a little bit of effort. That means we get to move on to the Tech 3 market, coming in at 40.15. Okay, we made a pretty good time here. Also trying to buy, we've got the Confessor at 27.5 million. Last I checked, it was yesterday, I bought 2 out of the 3 that I wanted to buy. So here is the Confessor. You can see why I made my move. 1 year low point, very spectacularly. Average price is almost reaching 30 million ISK. That means that you can get lucky. 36 million for the sellers, 30.5 million for the buyers. So I may have spurred a little bit of competition to come in. In fact, a lot of competition. And here is my last one buy order that I attempted. It probably won't trigger, but let's first keep an eye on the rest of the Tech 3 market before we assume that. There's a lot of competition coming in for these Confessors all of a sudden. Sellers are at 35 million, which is definitely at the low end. Buyers are at 30 million, which is 30.5 million, which is definitely cheap, but it's away from the bottom. And as a result here, well, this is definitely still a cheap Confessor market, and thus this is normal. Supply in the last 24 hours next to nothing, and we don't see that oversupply anymore. But is it gone, or has it moved? That's the real question. Here is the Hecate, surged up to 45 million. Look at that decline, look at that volume increase. That should be supply. We're talking 41 million now for the sellers, 37.6 million for the buyers, 42, 50, 90, half a page in the last 24 hours here. 190 down here, yeah, that's still quite a few ships. 129 down here. There is a lot of Hecates on the market. This could drive that price back down very quickly. Next up here we get the Jackdaw. Look at the pressure again, went to 40 million ISK. We're talking 38 million now for the sellers, 34 for the buyers. And okay, it's less than I expected. Honestly, this is not unreasonable. 18, 11, 24, 24. This is not unreasonable. So here we will probably be stalling, but not by too much anymore. And then finally this Vapul that's already below 35 million. Is now selling for 38 million. We do have 90 of them coming in here, and then 30 million. That's a wide margin between sellers and buyers. Last 24 hours, well, another 27, but nothing too crazy. Okay, this changes my perspective for sure. I thought we would still see like half a dozen 50 plus sell orders, things like that, at least in the Jackdaw and the Hecate market, showing real oversupply. That is not the case here all of a sudden. We definitely have a lowering of supply, which is good for the prices. The Hecate can still command 40 million. The Jackdaw has to give back ground, but 38 million is still not that bad. Okay, 40 million should be the average, but it's not that bad. And then this on the Confessor that is trying to work its way back to an average 36 to even 38 million ISK. So that's okay. That's all right. The good news for that is, of course, I've got 2 Confessors for 27.5 million. So my potential sell is already here. I'm gonna be more patient, of course, especially seeing the supply situation. But the really good news is that it does look like we may be past that oversupply gap, which means that well, the investment opportunities were not that many, but here in November, that Hecate here at around 36 million was probably your opportunity. Same here here with the Jackdaw that went down to 35 million. And then for the Zwepel, we had this initial November crunch as well. That may turn out to be the bottom. If that's the case, I was a little bit late, but I still managed to time the Confessor right here then in that late December crash, which would be full of potential, I think even more than the others. We will of course see, we'll have to keep an eye on that in the upcoming weeks, but for the advanced destroyers, the tactical destroyers, I am not seeing continued oversupply all of a sudden. This is definitely a trend break in my opinion. For these ships. That leaves us with the cruisers. We've got the Legion continuing its slow downtrend from an average 160 down towards 140, 148 for the sellers, but 134 for the buyers. This is again going to work on another bottom. On the next one, if we get back towards 130 range, I do think I'm gonna try to grab at least one Tech 3 ship as well on the one that I think will make the most, because this is the one wave, second wave, and we're working our way back down again. So if this keeps happening, then that's something to definitely remember here, this November downturn. Here, a little bit of pressure again on the Loki, now breaking through the 180 barrier, 176 on more supply, and then 159 for the buyers. But it's not too crazy in the volumes. There's a bit more, 25 here in the Legion, but nothing too crazy. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. Proteus, same thing, back down to 140 and then starting to move sideways. 144 for the sellers, 129 for the buyers. That's pretty low. That's at the low point already. And then we've got the Tengu that is slowly staying at 150. All right, not that bad. And then 142 for the buyers, bit of a margin opening up here. And supply wise, again, nothing too crazy. This is what I'm a little bit surprised by, is that we are back in a, well, lowly supplied market, nothing too crazy, and so prices get a chance to slightly stabilize. Now for the cruiser market, the weird thing is that sometimes even on next to no supply we reach these low points of like 140 and 130. If that repeats itself, I do think it's going to be worth it to try to at least grab one ship, not go too aggressive in the volumes here, but we've seen that before. So especially here on the Legion, that continued downturn could create an opportunity. The Loki is hesitating, the Proteus is hesitating as well. I do think that the Tengu will have room to go back down as well, like 135 or something like that. Buyers are at 142. It could still happen next to the Tech 2 ship market, where you often have very visible, let's show the Manticore for instance, very visible up and down swings. Hound as well, look at that. Clear 1 year low point, clear sell opportunity. In the Tech 3 ship market right now, it always feels like these, especially in the cruiser market, it feels like there's manipulation at hand, but it becomes something that we've seen several times in the last year. So perhaps we could try to time this market as well for the right purchase, but I'm not seeing that oversupply take over anymore, so I hope that you made your move on the Confessors, because that's pretty obvious. If the Hecates are starting to be able to command 40 million even on the low end and just stop there, same with the Jackdaw that is still this high in price, and that oversupply is not showing up anymore, that should mean really that the Confessor is gonna move back in line towards that 40 million range, and then of course your purchase even at 30.5 million still makes a lot of sense. Yep, the Tech 3 ship market, I'm not sure if it's gonna hold out, of course, but right now I am seeing a more well-supplied market with some volatility, so that could be another potential trading market. And that brings us to the extra products. Someone asked me to take a look at the Rattlesnake and the Praxis last week for alpha conduit runners, and now part of the request was also for some drones, so we're actually just gonna take a look at some drones, I think, at 48.20. Yeah, that leaves us some time. Actually, I had a good time here. So let's get to combat drones and let's see what we get. Heavy attack drones. We'll start with the Tech 2 and then we'll take a look at some faction. So here's the Wasp Tech 2 drone going for 1.6 million. Below average Praetor at a 1 year low point of 1.5 million. Then the Ogre, also 1 year low point, 1.4 million. Ogre 2, very popular. And then Berserker 2, probably when it comes to running conduits. Although it's the right damage time, it's not the best tracking. So this one is also at a 1 year low point. Tech 2 heavy drones across the board, 1 year low points. Could be worth it. Actually, average price like less than 1.5 million is. You could try to make a small investment in this and hope for a resurgence. That is very interesting. Let's take a look at the augmented drones then. Here's the augmented Berserker, 40 million, slightly below average, nothing too major here. Augmented Ogre, same thing, 44 million. Praedor actually up a little bit, but you know, average prices, nothing too special here. Same with the augmented Wasp. So I guess that what we really should look at is the nope, not integrated Berserker. That one is actually low. Where is Republic Fleet Berserker? There you go. Ooh, interesting, very interesting. Went to a high point of 3 million ISK, probably on lots of purchases for Apraxis, for the Rattlesnake, but it's already recovering back down towards 2 million ISK. So the good times are over for the Republic Fleet Berserker. It's back in the normal 2 million range. But this is probably conduit running interest that drove the price up from 1.75 million to almost double at 3 million ISK. That is definitely pretty significant. We'll take a quick look at some medium drones then, but I'm expecting a similar story here. Hammerhead 2, definitely below average. Then we get Infiltrator, very stable at a below average price. Valkyrie, same thing, coming from a 1 year low point. And then the Vespa coming from a very low 800,000 ISK here. So the Tech 2 drones not doing that well. Augmenteds, you know, all of these are recovering after a low point in September, October. So all of these are back towards average ranges. And then the Federation versions are doing okay. So really in the heavy drones, you clearly have that one move on the Republic Fleet Berserkers, because they have that best tracking and they're the best damage type as well for the conduits. But other than that, we've got a general trend where the Tech 2 drones are actually getting or at 1 year low points or definitely below average. Look at that Acolyte chart, that's just half a year almost straight down. Could be interesting. Then we've got the Hobgoblin, clearly below average despite the December spike. Hornet 2, 1 year low point by quite a bit. Average price, you could say almost 400,000 ISK. Right now selling for 340. Buyers less than 300,000 ISK. Not bad. And then the Warrior 2, definitely flat here as well. And then if we go for factions, we get Augmenteds below average. Augmented Hobgoblin at average price. Hornets also in recovery. And Augmented Warriors back down already. Okay, and then Federation Navy Hobgoblin down to our low points. This could of course then be tied to Faction Warfare LP. Imperials are low, and we get Republic Fleet Warrior. Bit of volatility, hard to say. Yeah, on these small drones I don't think we're gonna glean too much information. In the heavies we clearly saw all of the trends, and then of course there is still one drone that we have to take a look at. That is the Gecko. Perfect for the Rattlesnake. 1 year high point going for almost 150 million ISK, 148 for the sellers, 135 for the buyers. I've got like 3 of them that I bought for, I think right here below 100 million. Do I still have that on the ticker? I don't think so. Let's quickly take a look at that. Ticker. No, but I have a small Gecko investment. I could actually sell here. I feel this. I think they almost doubled in price. So this is of course a unique drone. The reason why all of a sudden this one is at a 1 year high point is because it's used, of course, it's gonna be useful for the Rattlesnake in the conduits, might even like two-shot some of the ships or something like that, some of the small ships, and it's just that powerful. But you can't just make more of them. You depend on CCP to introduce them, mostly through gifts, things like that, anniversary gifts. You often get geckos, but that means that these tend to only go up in price until CCP brings back fresh supply, and right now we're clearly at a 1-year high point. They've almost doubled in price from last year, from 80 million and now going for almost 150 million. Yeah, that was a pretty good investment if you bought these a year ago. And the gamble that you always take is that, well, it's a holiday seasons without a gecko part of the gifts, for instance, for the days of gifts. That's always the gamble that you take. And so now, if you would decide to jump in at this point, you're taking the gamble that FanFest and the usually in May we get like gifts for the anniversary of EVE Online, that it won't be there. That's not a gamble that I would want to take. Usually the best idea is, of course, to buy right after CCP introduced more geckos to the game. Right now it's a seller's market and we are asking almost 150 million ISK for the gecko. So that was a great suggestion to take a look at the drones. In fact, I may just, grab some Tech 2 drones and hope that these make a comeback, that somehow Tech 2 is impacted by the redistribution that CSP is planning for the resources in EVE Online. That's a gamble that is much smaller in size, right? I could say, all right, I'm gonna buy like maybe 20 or 50 of these drones. I use them myself, so that makes a lot more sense. And if that does happen, at least it's something, well, then of course I could make a lot of ISK out of it. And if it doesn't happen, well, I just have extra drones. I lose them from time to time anyways, so I've got lots of extra medium drones that I can use anyways. So that to me makes a bit more sense than to do massive gambles in, for instance, the Tech 2 market in general, hoping for, or the advanced move material market, hoping for CCP to actually tackle that as well in the resource distribution. And we don't really know at this point. That's, in my opinion, really going to dominate speculation in the market once CCP comes out with concrete information. When will that be? Well, I'm looking towards FanFest at this point for some actual big announcements. And then in between, up until that point, we've got Team Talos that is planning to do lots of balance changes and things like that. So we are definitely in for an interesting start of 2020, I think, heading towards that FanFest and hopefully some very cool announcements. Anyways, that's going to be it for this EVE Talk. Enjoy the holidays, guys, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.